George and I talked yesterday, and Tiffany, and what we want to do is make every Wednesday about, mindset, about attitudinal development, attitudinal healing. And for those that are familiar with, my work in Attitudinal Healing International, preparing for this again this morning, I looked up the mindset, skill set, and I thought it's even deeper than the mindset. You're going to see why. And some of you are familiar with some of these things I have behind me, but I'm just going to give an overview of them again about the 3 circles of life. So, it's interesting when you do a study on Google, employers, 92% said their decisions on hiring someone is based on mindset versus their skill set. I can always teach them skills. I can't teach them attitude, or I can't teach them skill set. So this group, our group, this mastermind, we're going beyond the mindset. We're going to be talking about soul set every Wednesday. It's going to be Soulful Wednesday. And you've heard me talk about before the spiritual side of success. So it's going to be Soulful Wednesdays every Wednesday. We're going to have some great interviews. You're not going to want to miss these. But let me just talk about Socrates for a minute. He said the unexamined life is not worth living. That philosophy cost him his life. Many of you know, studying in school, that he was put on trial and he was executed by making him drink poison because of that philosophy. The unexamined life is not worth living. He challenged the young people of his time to not accept the philosophies or the politics or the religion and all those other things. He got them to think. And when you start trying to help people think or trying to get them to think differently, watch out. Look at our political situation, correct? And one of the things that philosophy will do, it'll raise your level of thinking way beyond. For example, I challenge all my friends, whether on the red side, blue side, pink side, purple side, whatever side you're on, and you look at this last election, for example, how can it be almost down the middle? How can you have that many people? Because one side will call the other side foolish in their beliefs, but yet the other side is almost down the middle. So it's always bigger than us. So that's why we always need to examine our life. We need to examine our thinking. We need to examine everything. And to go back to here, the circles of life. The body, are we okay with the, good. The body, okay, the soul, which is made up of the mind, the will, and the emotions. And then you have the spirit, that which came from love in my philosophy currently today. It came from love, and it's going back to love once we're finished with this. The soul, who we really are, is made up of 3 things: the mind, the will, and the emotions. And that's why an employer says, hey, give me someone with a mindset. 94%, 96% of the time, they'd rather have that. Because that's what we should guide our lives with. I have a little train here. Now, don't anyone make fun of my artistic abilities, okay? This is a train. I don't know, hopefully you can see this, but the engine is the mind, the middle car is the will, and the end car is the emotion. I'm going to come back and talk about that a little bit. And so over here, on this side, and you've seen me do this before, this is a little bit different today, you have a thermo on each side, and the word thermo is what? Heat, correct? So you have heat on this side and you have heat on this side. And this over here is skills or a skill set. Over here is performance. Everything is based on performance basis, right? And how do I perform? How do I perform? How do I perform? And then, are we okay? Andre should just adjust his arm.
You can see better.
Oh, okay. So the thermo, the skill set, the performance is on this side. And on this side over here is the attitudinal development, the mindset. And so many times, I've said this many times, I can get people to change here, but they always will have a glass ceiling. We mentioned this many other times. Once I get people to change over here in attitude and attitudinal healing and mindset and understand my life and understand who I am and who I'm not, then I work on this and keep moving this up, and my philosophy comes up, then this will automatically follow, and there's no ceilings. It's living without limits. This is what all the gurus of all over the years, this is how you live without limits on this side. On this side is the ego, right? This is the ego side. This is the soul side. The soul side has no limits. The ego always has limits because we'll end up getting on our way if we live over here all the time, which many people do. You'll see many people, and I've had customers this way, and I have friends this way, became multimillionaires, but their life was a disaster. I've had people over here spend so much time here, they still got all the riches and the honor and the glory, and yet their life was so beautiful. So we got to keep out of this side and always work on this side, and this is what we want to make these Wednesdays about, is living over here, okay? So getting back to this, what's that? Okay, so on Wednesdays, I want us to examine our lives every Wednesday, and not only this way where it's a lecture from me, that's not going to happen, but also listening to other people and listening to you all, because that's even more important to me, is to get you to participate and say, you know, this happened or that happened. How many of you, just give a shout out, are involved in the living course? I think we had how many people in the living course, the attitudinal development course? Give a quick shout out. One. Only one so far. No, there's a whole lot more than that. You're just being shy. Yeah, okay. So anyway, we got to examine our lives, and we got to understand this, because perpetual performance and success based on philosophy and on the soul. When that happens, watch out. Okay, you will live life without limits. And philosophy is the love of wisdom. That's what philosophy is all about. It's love of wisdom. You listen to Tom Martin on Fridays. I don't think there's a Friday I remember that he didn't bring up and he'd hold up a book. And he says, now this book, you know, George, the same way, you know, John Whelan, you know, a lot of us, you know, in this book, well, you know, I used to be accused I couldn't do anything if I didn't learn it in a book. And I love that reputation. Thank you very much. So philosophy is the love of wisdom. One of the wisdoms that I learned from a mentor that I actually was on his staff, Dr. Dennis Waitley, who wrote The Psychology of Winning, The Goal Mind, Seeds of Greatness. Study him on YouTube. Remember, YouTube University. It's all out there. He says you don't sell anything. You only open long-term relationships. George did a great job on this yesterday when he was talking about our database. You open long-term relationships. The decision of the buyer is always based upon the quality of the seller, the person bringing the product or service. So if you're not getting the results and you're getting turn downs or you're not closing, you don't look at your closing skill and take a closing skill. You jump in and you study Dr. Dennis Waitley and some of these other people I'm going to point out here, because apparently you're not bringing quality, the person bringing the product or service. And that's why you hear me talk about this all the time. You need to work on yourself to become more valuable. The master of this was Jim Rohn. He was Tony Robbins' mentor. I remember Jim when I first started out my career. He was one of my mentors. Let me play this little clip here. If you can't hear it, To
travel the world, especially for me, farm boy from Idaho. I didn't have many skills when I first awakened to the opportunity that, you know, you could work for pay. I knew how to milk cows, but, you know, that was about it, and it didn't pay very well. But when I was introduced to network marketing, health and nutrition, a marketing system where I could start at the bottom, go to the top, and start part-time, it literally revolutionized and changed my life forever. I've never been the same. And a big share of my story now is sharing with people around the world this extraordinary opportunity. And then along with it, the philosophy that makes it work. Because you can have every technique in the world and the best product in the world, and you can have the finest support system in the world, but unless you have the philosophy that drives you to do the necessary things to make it work, then nothing works. So I like to talk.
You're muted, Fred.
So if you look at these philosophies that he's talking about, and one of the philosophies that I have in my office, it says, set a goal so big you can't achieve it until you grow into the person who can. So that's the philosophies that he's touting here. Let me close this window out here. These little things are blocking us. Hold on one sec. Let me get rid of that. I don't want to hit escape. All right, I got stuck on a window here. Exit full screen. There we go. These little zoom controls are really interesting. Sometimes they drag, sometimes they don't. All right. So anyway, and Jim was a master of that. You work on yourself to become more valuable. Jim went on. I mean, when you listen to the story and you want to study Jim Rohn, you want to study these people. And in your car, we've talked about it before. It should be a rolling university. Never listen to things that don't raise your level of thinking, that doesn't cause your engine of your life to be more fueled. And you want to be learning philosophy all the time and different things, the philosophy and psychology of performance. Is life worth living? It depends on the liver, said William James. There's another person you want to make one of your buddies. He was the father, he was known as the father of modern psychology, been dead for many, been no longer around, I should say. I don't think any of us die necessarily, but he hasn't been around for many years, but his philosophy, he was known as the father of modern day psychology in America. William James, is life worth living? It depends on the liver. You. What is a cause of a good life? Let me just give you a quick couple minutes of this. And by the way, I didn't provide these notes to you or this handout intentionally, because as we're going through this, if you're not driving, don't do it if you're driving. I want you just to write down not these thoughts or not these quotes or not what I say. I want you to write down about you. How can I get bigger? How can I work on me? That sparks something. What could I do different? So don't worry about what I say. I want you to think about and spend the time in your reaction to what I say or what some of these people say. So, one of the things I don't want us to be is a sissy, okay? And maybe some of you in school, you remember this guy here. Let me just play this one.
It's your funeral. No, actually, you're dead. Your loved ones are all sitting around reminiscing about your life. What are they saying? How will you be remembered? Did you have a good life? How would we know? What constitutes a good life? The first thing to consider is whether the value of a life is determined by the liver of that life or by other people. What if your last thought before you died was that you had had a perfect life, but when your loved ones sit around and discuss it, they all decide that your life was kind of awful? Is that possible? Could they be right about your life and you be wrong? Or run it the other way. What if everyone else thinks your life was amazing, but you die miserable feeling your life was a total waste? Who's right? And which of these two options would you prefer? We have reached the end of Crash Course Philosophy, and it's time to examine your own life. And that means asking yourself some big questions, like, are you living the way you think you should? Are you working toward goals you actually care about? How important are these things to you? Right now, the choices you make, the way you spend your time, these things are shaping the type of life you'll lead. So think about what matters, because as Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. The 20th century French philosopher Albert Camus recounted the ancient Greek myth of Sisyphus.
That's the sissy I was talking about. We don't want to be a sissy.
Probably heard of it. Due to various transgressions he'd committed, Sisyphus was condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a mountain. And when he reached the top, the boulder would roll back down, and then Sisyphus would have to start all over again. This was the entirety of his existence. He couldn't do anything else. It was just up and down the hill in a never-ending cycle. And you know what Camus said about that? He said, "We must imagine Sisyphus happy." Really? Happy? Well, Camus was an existentialist, and he thought that each one of us basically is Sisyphus. Nothing that any of us does is inherently important, because stuff just doesn't have any inherent meaning. We're all just rolling boulders up hills. But we can choose to give meaning to what we do. After all, we decide what to value, so when we throw ourselves into a task, it becomes filled with meaning we give to it. Some people find this story of Sisyphus to be really depressing, because on the one hand, it's kind of saying that nothing you do matters. But on the other hand, it's saying that anything you do matters, provided you choose to imbue.
This is a 9-minute video that I'm going to provide this to all of you, these notes. Please watch the rest of this, and you'll get to what I'm talking about here, living on this side, because on this side here, can you see it without me sharing the screen or no?
It's harder.
Oh, it's harder?
Mhm.
Okay, hold a second.
Unsure.
Well, here, that's okay. It's not, on this side it's thermo, on this side is thermo. Over here is the thermometer, over here is the thermostat. It's what he's talking about in philosophy, and living here in the soul is the only way you control your life is over here. It's a thermometer. The thermostat is just a reflection of what's going on the outside. And many of you, when I remember first hearing this story of Sisyphus, is that I thought, oh my gosh, that feels like my life sometimes. I roll the boulder up, it comes back down. I roll the boulder up, it comes back down. But then as I started developing my own philosophy and these attitudinal healing principles and these attitudinal development, I realized that, wait a minute, life is not against me. Life is not working against me. It's working for me. And a lot of these experiences, so they all started taking on meaning and purpose. And some of you know my personal story. I'm talking about many, many, many disasters, but they started taking on new meaning no matter what it is. So this idea of philosophy and understanding performance from the philosophical and psychological point of view is so critical and so important. So, you know, sometimes, yes, we are a Sisyphus, but no, not really, but maybe so. It really depends, like you say, what value you put on this and how much work you're doing on yourself. Again, going back to this is all about soul set or mindset, is that we create that we set a goal so big you can't achieve it until you grow into the person who can. That doesn't mean performance based. You set that goal, you know, as most of the authors emphasize, the why, the big why that we hear a lot on Fridays from Tom Martin. So, you know, we don't want to be rolling up boulders, letting it fall back down, getting back up. And some of us, we feel that way, whether it's with your finances, whether it's with your relationships, our weight, our health, all kind of things. We roll the boulder up, it comes back down. We roll the boulder up, it comes back down. So, you know, in order to get out of that, the most important character quality we need to develop, and that's why these meetings are so important in the morning, you know, both skill set and mindset. But if we have the skill set without the mindset, you know, then the courage will lack to keep going, or we'll perform. And like I said, on that left side, on that thermostat, we'll operate in just a range. We'll keep hitting our heads on that volume. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about that when I was a young manager. And, you know, I would work with my people and I realized what they were doing. They would keep hitting their head on the ceiling when I would ask the magic question, tell me, who is the highest earner in your entire family? Your friends that you know, who are the highest earner? Do you know 90% of the time they would always come back and they would throw out a number? 50,000. This was back in the late 70s, early 80s. 70,000, maybe, you know, very seldom heard 100,000 back then. But guess what their production was? If their friends and family, the highest producer, the highest income earners were 50,000, guess what they kept hitting their head on? 50,000. It's because it was their belief system, their philosophy, what they learned. The most important character is courage. How do I get it? We don't get courage. You can't get courage. We bring it forth. That courage is what we came in with. There's not a bait. You don't need to zoom it. That's fine. What I was talking about here, that spirit we came in with is nothing but courage. The soul is filled with courage, and we've gone through this an awful lot, that we just have lost that courage. And cœur in the word in French is the word heart. We've lost that heart a lot in our lives because of what people have said or what experiences we've gone through as kids, and mostly it's all childhood issues. 99% of the time you can trace it back to that. So how do we keep developing this courage where you're so courageous, nothing can offend you? When you're so courageous, nothing, no matter what lost in your life, you're so courageous that you keep moving despite anything. How do you do that? Well, I say it's all about the ketchup, okay? It's all about the ketchup, the philosophy. Now, what do I mean by the ketchup? I want you to watch this. Now, this is just the example of this, and this is a totally different presentation. But I want to play this for you. Hold on one sec.
Want to see something cool? Yeah. In my right hand, I am holding a tiny little paper ketchup cup. This tiny little paper ketchup cup, what most people don't know is that less than 1% of these ketchup cups ever reach their full potential. And that is a made-up statistic to get your attention. In all seriousness, these little tiny paper ketchup cups, when you go to get them, how many do you have to fill up with ketchup? So like 1 or 2? How many? This is a participation part of the program. 3, 5, a tray full. What most people don't know is that there's little folds in this paper ketchup cup that, if you pop it open, can turn to 3 times its size. Where in your life do you have untapped potential that's hiding in plain sight? Maybe it's not hiding at all. Maybe you know your own potential. It's just you didn't do anything about it because you don't want to challenge the status quo. Or maybe because you just want to, be like everybody else, or because you thought you were doing the right thing at that time and you didn't speak up, and now your car payment is more expensive than you thought it was going to be because you didn't try to pull at the folds that are right in front of you. Or maybe because you just didn't know what to say. You ever have one of those moments where you're like,
Anyway, this is a really interesting lady and what she teaches, and it's 5 magic questions. So you want to watch this once you get this document that I'll be sending out and sharing with you right toward the end here. So the ketchup cup. I mean, what an example. That's like our capacity. For courage. We talked about the other day about giving, and I said, a lot of people give for many, many different reasons, right? Some give out of guilt, some give out of kindness, some give out of everything else. You should only give for one reason, and then everything else follows. You should only give for one reason on this right side of the chart, the soul side versus the performance side. And that soul side, when you give from the soul, the law is that one of my mentors taught me many years ago, Fred, you give to get. You only give to get. Now, that doesn't mean that you get back, or that doesn't mean that you're expecting something back. You get a greater capacity. Give, and your ketchup cup will start spreading, and you'll have 3 times the courage that you currently have. And you just keep giving some more, and then it gets more courage. And when people that you gave to turn around and hurt you, it doesn't matter, because they can't take away from you what you've developed by keep giving to them. I can't tell you of the experiences in my life, because I've been involved in a lot of charity, a lot of nonprofit stuff, a lot of philanthropic things. And some of the people that I've done the most for have just wasted it or not done anything with it, or some even turned on me, right? But it didn't matter, because they couldn't take away from me what I got, and that was a greater capacity to give. And that's where courage is. That's where courage is. And it's got to come from within, because if you depend on the feedback you give and someone offends you that you gave to, or they're not using it the way you thought, what happens is that they're the wrong facts. They come back to you, and you'll start living over on the ego side, on the performance side. I'll never do that again. I've got to quit giving. Because you forget why you're giving. You're giving to give a greater capacity, because you got to be careful of wrong facts, right? The story of an insurance man. He was writing in a policy, on a 90-year-old guy. He had such great health. And he says, hey, buddy, you have any regrets? You've lived so long and you're so healthy. It looks like everything went perfect for you. And he said, do you have any regrets? He said, only one. He said, if I knew I would have lived so damn long, I would have taken better care of myself. So, what are we doing for ourselves? How are we working on ourselves to be able to take more value out? How are we stretching our ketchup cups, right? And the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And the second best time is when? Now. Emily, question for you. After you did your goals yesterday, how did you feel last night?
Amazing. Can you hear me? I'm just driving.
Yes.
Yeah, I felt great. And honestly, just coming into the year, I'm making this year about action. We always talk about everything we want to do, but nothing's going to happen unless you move forward, right, on something, or just take the action. So no more hesitating. You just have to put it out there. You just got to do it. And that's what I'm doing. So I appreciate all your help.
You're welcome. What happened to Emily yesterday is she started going, wait, and she probably had a whole lot of pain as she kept thinking about it. When you listen to Tom Martin, or you listen to a Fred DeFalco, you listen to a George, you listen to a Tony DeFalco, you listen to some of the, about the open houses, and you got Maxwell doing, 17, 18 houses from open houses, and you go, oh my gosh, it's just
Max
so much.
is so inspiring. Yes, Max is like one of the most inspiring people. So yes, and I ordered my open house signs, and I'm just ready to go.
But sometimes when you're listening to that, when you don't take action, the pain, because you just have all this pain that's not really there. All you have to do is stretch the ketchup cup, right? So optimist, preventing jumping from a 42-story building. You're talking about what we do in our lives. We listen to so many people. We try to get good. If we get to a certain level and then we start hanging out with the wrong people. There's a story of the optimist in New York City. He was such an optimist. He worked in the lower floors of his 42-second office building. He was such an optimist. There was a guy standing on the ledge ready to jump and take his life. They sent him up. And they said, hey, listen, you know what? You've got a reputation, my friend. Go up there, see what you can do with this guy. Well, he was so darn good. He talked the guy to come off the ledge, and he said, and the way he did, he said, hey, look, buddy, tell you what. You come in, you spend 1 hour with me. That's all I'm asking. And at the end of that 1 hour, you still want to jump? I'm going to help you. How's that? He said, just talk to me for 1 hour. And he had a reputation. So he goes in, and this guy had a list this long. Every fact why his life was miserable. Every fact why he did this. Every fact. And then for 1 solid hour, and everyone's waiting down, the fire department, the police department, and his family, and all this other kind of stuff. And so they're going, oh boy, what's going on? What's going on? Well, he listened to this for 1 solid hour, but then it went to 2 hours, 3 hours. Everyone's getting so anxious. They said, let's go up and find out what's going on. Didn't happen. They just waited patiently. All of a sudden, the window flies back open. Now, instead of 1 person on the ledge, there were 2, and they both jumped. So be careful who you listen to. Be careful who you give. You've heard it, don't cast your pearls before swine, correct? So when you get facts, make sure you're in YouTube University. Make sure you're listening to the Fred DeFalcos of the world, the George Philbecks, the Tom Martins, and Tony, people that have done it, people that are succeeding in spite of. Because, a lot of times we got this idea of what performance and success is, but a lot of times it's not. And what performance and success is not, number one, it's not possessions. How many people have we known? Robin Williams said, I've studied inside and out. How can a man like that not be successful or happy? What happened? So possessions doesn't do it. Position doesn't do it. Power doesn't do it. Pleasure doesn't do it. And a lot of times our engine is not doing a very good job in our lives because we have wrong information, or we have facts, or we believe that as soon as I get this, then this will happen. As soon as I have this, then this will happen. As soon as I can get more pleasure from my relationship, then this will happen. And what happens, instead of living from the soul and the mind and the will and emotions and letting the spirit guide you, the ego steps in, which is all about the body. And then we believe that it's the body just says, hey, look at that person, look at that person, look at that person. That is not what performance and success is all about. It's about peace of mind. It's about courage. It's about being so big, you're constantly giving. It's about stretching that ketchup cup. Failure, setbacks, problems, situations, circumstances are not holding you back. In my line of work, in attitudinal healing, in my line of work, where I've worked with all types of people in all kinds of situations, and I've done a lot of prison work. I have a whole entire website about mothers who murder their children, and why do they do that? I have someone exiting prison right now after 20 and a half years for murdering her 3-year-old son. What happens? What happens? And it's not our failures and setbacks and problems and situation, and what happens to our soul when we're little kids sometimes, and then we don't develop a philosophy to move us forward. We don't develop a belief system that causes us to operate on the side of the soul versus the side of the ego. operate on the side of the spirit versus the side of the body, right? So what's interesting, failure, setbacks, problems, and situations is when you go to this article here, you know, and you read many things like this, that a lot of them are illusions. And then how often do what we worry about really happens? A whopping 91% of worries were false alarms. The remaining 9% of worries that did not come true. The outcome was better than expected about a third of the time. And when you're procrastinating, or when you're not doing what your soul is maybe telling you to do, then you have that aggravation, you have that feeling. It could be as simple as something that's cleaning your garage, whatever it is. But you have all these things that you think are holding you back. There's one thing holding you back, and that is that mind is not in control. It's the will, maybe. Well, I don't want to do it. Or it's your emotions that are in control. Well, I don't really feel that, whatever it is. As Tony Robbins so well puts, he says, when I guide my mind, it's not negotiable. It's not negotiable, because he wants to get that engine to have pure fuel. And that's what we need. So it's not our failures, setbacks, and problems that hold us back. This is from Fred DeFalco, The Artful Management. The success is the artful management of failures and setbacks. This is what is your greatest driving force. A lot of my driving force in life is because of sexual abuse as a young kid, because of juvenile delinquency and in trouble with the law and being locked up away from my family 3 times from the age of 11 to 15. It came from abuse of being locked in a dark room when I didn't behave. And that has served me more than sometimes or people that maybe didn't go through those experiences. So that's not what was holding me back. It was just my belief about it, my philosophy about it for many years, and not going there and dealing with that and working with that and understanding how well that could serve me. Life didn't happen to me. It didn't happen to any of us. It happens for us. It happens for us. Everything in our life happens for us, not against us. And what we need to focus on, if you have the true philosophy, is you learn to dissolve problems instead of solving them, or setbacks or failures. And there's 6 types. There's ones that are no control. How many of you have control? You had control over the presidential election. And yet the energy and time that so many people spent on. How many of us have control over the economy, success? And in this business, our business is not good or bad out there. It's good or bad here. So there's a lot of times there's no control. I sold in 18, 19% interest rates. I opened up an office as a 26-year-old sales manager after 3 years of selling and being the #1 salesperson in an organization. I opened up a brand new office at 18.5% interest rates. Thank goodness I had leaders, I had mentors that said, hey, the time to go is when things are bad. The time to artfully manage failure setbacks. Let's open an office because this is going to turn around and we'll be poised. And boy, were we poised. So we had no control of what was going on out there with the economy, but we had control of the decisions we would make. We made sure that we didn't live in fear. And that's the thing with fear and love, is that the fear is always on the left-hand side and the love is on the right. The other type of problem is the ones I control. If you're having a problem with your relationships, you have control of that, nobody else. The future, that's another situation that you have something like, you've got a future situation that you're facing. What am I going to do about it? So there's certain behaviors that you do. A deadline. I can't tell you, I had land development business, I had investment business and investment fund in 5 different states. Oh my gosh, when the crash come down at 8 and 9, I had to go in, and you don't go into a banker and say, hey, listen, I was really sorry, things are bad, and you let your shoulders droop. You go in and you say, hey, listen, I got to tell you something. And I saved the entire company from 2009 to June 10, 2010. Unfortunately, lost it all to a hedge fund and with a hostile takeover 2 years later. But I had to go and I had to do protests in front of banks and stuff because I had deadlines. I wasn't going to let them use that against me. So that's another situation. What do you do about it? You hold your shoulders high. You stretch the cup. You keep filling it with courage. And you go in and you say, hey, here's how we're going to handle this, Mr. Banker, right? And then so you deal with it. The what if. The what ifs never come true. You saw the statistics. Here's where most of us live our lives. This is where we live our lives. We're frustrated most of the time. This is where stress comes from. There is a big difference in stress versus distress. People say to me, Fred, you seem so frustrated. I said, no, I'm sorry, yeah, stress, distress, and eustress. I'm just full of eustress today. A lot of times, Andre's sitting over here, you don't see him, but Andre said, Fred, calm down. I said, I'm full of eustress. Come on, let's go. Eustress is your watch, not these digital watches today, but a watch wound up tight so it ticks. So there's a big difference. And so a lot of times we live in here, and then setbacks are not for self-pity, but for self-propulsion and self-preservation. Think of the diamond, correct? The real problem, every single one of us deal with inferiority complex. This is why I don't go to a football game. You know why I don't go to a football game? Every freaking time they get into a huddle, I'm convinced they're talking about me. That's a joke, okay? But a lot of times that's the way we live life. That's the way we live life. We'll go into a room full of people and we wonder why, what's this feeling I have? I feel inferior to them. And there's 90% of the people on this call, there's 90% of the people living life this way. We feel inferior. And my one session we did, I said, if God is so good, why am I so blank? Even in a room full of wealthy people, I used to get back the same responses. Why am I so lonely? Why am I so frustrated? Why am I so angry? Why am I can't get moving? Frank McKinney, that I keep talking about, the book, the Aspire book, he's, after his life of success, he still wrote that. It's inferiority. He admits to that. So the 4R solution is realize you're unique. Only one of you. Look at your thumbprint, folks. We all have a thumbprint. You've got to learn to respond versus react correctly to your weaknesses and weak points. You can't sit around and go, should do my goal, should do my goal, should do my goal. Respond correctly. Massive action that Tony Robbins talks about all the time. You've got to respond versus reacting correctly to your weak points. Instead of, dude, damn it, if you're not happy, talk about it. Let's get it done. Let's move forward. Refuse to compare yourself to anyone. You can't compare yourself to anyone one way or the other. In a trip to Haiti, I remember Frank McKinney talking about, he said, guys, listen, a lot of you are successful real estate people here have taken this trip with me. And when you leave here, you're going to be tempted to be depressed. You're going to be tempted to feel ashamed of what you have. You're going to be ashamed for living in America when you watch how these people live and their kids are eating dirt patties made out of dirt and dust from the ground and sprinkled with lemon juice. You're going to feel, but don't do that. Don't compare yourself. Go back home, enjoy your success, and find out what you can do with it. Because you can't compare yourself to anyone. If you compare yourself to someone like that, then it causes depression sometimes. You compare yourself to someone better off, it's discouragement, and you're ruining the courage you're trying to develop. Remember and respect the process. Life is not happening to us, it's happening for us. This poem here I love. It's been my philosophy for many years. If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with success unexpected in common hours. He will put some things behind, will pass an invisible boundary. That's what I'm talking about, folks, that invisible boundary. Once you get there and you experience it, there's never any turning back. New, universal, and more liberal laws will begin to establish themselves around and within him, or the old laws be expanded. A lot of my old laws have been expanded so greatly and interpreted in his favor in a more liberal sense, and he will live with the license of a higher order of beings, the soul versus the ego. 4 magic words that I want you to think about: thought, action, habit, and character. If there's any smokers on here, I want to challenge you to these 4 words. I will get you to exchange that habit for good habits with these 4 words: thought, action, habit, character. Thought, action, habit, character. A lot of people try to kick the habit. Cigarette smoking is not a habit. Alcoholism is not a habit. Drug addiction is not a habit. Overeating is not a habit. It's our character. And the only way you can change your character is going back to the basics. What got you there in the first place? Your thoughts. And then retaking the actions, all the things I've just been talking about. Time, no respecter to anyone. Now I'm going to spend more time on this at another time because, this is really important. No time it's not a respecter to anyone. People say, hey, Fred, teach me time management. I said, there's no such thing. You can't manage the time. I can only help you manage your priorities. The 7 focus areas of life. Tom had this and did such a great job, and these are all over the place, and this was a part of the goals. You've got to have goals in each of these areas. I challenge you. I hope that you will. Send me, you see my email right behind me, send me your goals. I don't care if it's only one goal in each area for 2021. I challenge you, send me those, just one goal for each of these areas in 2021 you have. And only set it for a year. I get a lot of people doing visioning for 3 years and 5 years, but goal setting should only be for 1 year. This year, one in each of these areas, what does it look like? Conclusion, time, money, and circumstances are not an issue in your life. You can always go find more time or manage it better. You can find money. Money always flows to good ideas and circumstances we just talked about. Going back to the circle of life, soul, set versus mindset, fear versus love. You want to live in the love side, which is the right side of the chart, and in your soul. And then this is the poem that we've gone over and over before, and that is the ego versus the soul. So this will be on the thing I'm going to put in the chat here. When I close this out, you go to documents under seminars, and it's in here. So the ego seeks to serve itself, soul seeks to serve others. Ego seeks outward recognition, soul seeks inner authenticity. Ego sees life as a competition. Soul sees life as a gift. You hear me and George, used to kid about. He says, go out to kick the, competition. That's what we do, right? But, I've got to a point where, hey, listen, it's not about competition. It's about, it's about a gift. Let's go out and give it. And you notice George, thank you, George, has always said, now let's go out and give somebody some love. Let's go out and give them some more attention. Ego seeks to preserve self. Soul seeks to preserve others. Ego looks outward. Soul looks inward. Ego feels lack. Soul feels abundance. Over on this side is abundance. Over on that side is scarcity. And that's what a lot of us. Ego is drawn to lust. Ego is mortal. Soul is internal. Ego is drawn to lust. Soul is drawn to love. Ego seeks wisdom. Soul is wisdom. This is where we're talking about, folks. Philosophy is the love of wisdom. Philosophy is living in your soul, not your ego, not your body. It's all about the soul, the mind, the will, and the emotions, getting them to operate as a train and take you through life. Ego enjoys the prize. Soul enjoys the journey. Ego is cause to pain. Soul is cause of healing. Ego rejects God. Soul embraces God. Ego seeks to be filled. Soul is eternal wholeness. Ego is me. Soul is we. And again, I put this up, the Aspire book, which is all pre-orders. My goal this year is to convince 40 people a week in 2021. I will have convinced and gotten people to commit to 2,080 copies of that book, the Aspire book, because each book, $25, provides 200 meals to Haiti. And when you go there, you'll never leave there the same. And when I did, I said, I will be involved for the rest of my life. And when I think about $25, watching those kids eat those mud patties, sprinkled lemon juice, so they could have some taste, it's life-changing. So my goal, this is one of mine, is 416,000 meals. I'm asking everybody on this call today, we have 81 left. I'm asking for 81 of you to take $25 and buy yourself the Aspire book by Frank McKinney, which it's guaranteed to alter your DNA. 25 people, I would love to see 80. I'm going to check with Frank at the end of the day and say, hey, did we get, because many of you have already done it, 10 or 12 or 15 of you have already done it. Did we get another 50 orders today? Because that's a donation to Haiti, 200 meals, but it's a donation to yourself. So anyway, that's where we're going with this Wednesday. It's all about soul set. It's all about us really digging deep. It's about taking these ketchup cups and keep stretching them. And it's all about coming from giving.